Hello, Read 516. This is Dr. Keisler, and I'm going to spend a few minutes describing your next assignment, which is the response to intervention plan. So this is sort of a reading specialist simulation, a trial in what you might actually be doing at a school site as a reading specialist. So we've gotten to the point where you have finished your work with the first student, and you've given them a battery of assessments, and we've got a whole bunch of data. So we decided this semester, rather than having you do a case study on that one student, we would have you get together in groups and create an RTI plan with that data, looking at it as a whole with all of those students together. Because in reality, this is the sort of role that a reading specialist would play in a school. You wouldn't just be making a plan or decisions for one particular student. You would have many students in front of you, and then you'd need to figure out kind of how to group those students and create this plan. And so most schools are using a response to intervention model now, or they are on the road to starting to use that if they've got a significant population of students that do need intervention, or they're looking to prevent some of these reading problems. So let's set the scene for a minute. You're part of a team of reading specialists at Rosa Parks Elementary School. So your school recently received training on response to intervention, which I will just call RTI from now on, as a way to respond to the needs of the struggling readers at your school. So you'll see on Titanium that you have two of those IRIS modules from Vanderbilt University to go through. The first one is an overview. So it's response to intervention, kind of an overview of what it is, how a school can implement it, what it looks like. So that we're going to use as the model for the training that your school has been given. So you should make sure that you go through that entire module so that you're familiar with the RTI framework that we're going to be considering in this assignment. So implementation. So imagining now that when school began in August, your team worked with the faculty, the teachers at your school, to identify students for Tier 1 intervention. So from watching the module, you went through the screening process similar to what they describe in the module, and you found some students in each classroom that qualified or were candidates for Tier 1 in-class intervention. So your team of reading specialists supported the classroom teachers in creating and implementing appropriate classroom level interventions at Tier 1. So remember, these again are interventions that were done within the classroom by the classroom teachers. Some of these interventions included differentiating their core reading curriculum for the students, and so you'll see when we look at the schedule in a minute that they divided students into groups based on some assessment data that they had, and then they worked with those small groups within the regular classroom setting. So within the confines of their 90-minute language arts block, they worked on some of these Tier 1 interventions. So this is the daily instructional plan that your school came up with. So this is what was happening in each classroom from K to 5 during their language arts block. So you'll see that they taught their reading and language arts from 9 to 10:30, so that's kind of a typical amount of time. And so this is what it would look like. The teacher would give whole group instruction for about 10 minutes, and then he or she would break the students into their groups. So you'll notice that there are 3 groups. You have group 1, group 2, and group 3. The teacher would first, for 20 minutes, meet with group 1 and work on some small group instruction activities related to whatever the focus of the lesson for the entire group was that day. While group 1 was with the teacher, group 2 would be in the learning centers. So the activities in those learning centers would likely be related to the skills that the students were working on, that they could work on independently, ones that were related to topics in the unit or perhaps from the unit that they had just completed. And then you'll see that group 3 is having some independent practice time. So related to what they were focusing on for the day. Group 3 is they're ready to go on to the independent practice part of what they were working on. So they are working, these two groups, remember, are not working with the help of the teacher at this point. So the teacher is with group 1. Then they would move to the small group instruction for the second group. At that point, group 3 would be done with their independent practice, moving to the learning centers, and then group 1 that the teacher had just met with would move to doing their independent practice. So you can probably figure out from the schedule kind of how the groups, what their levels are. I would take the guess that this group 3 is your most proficient group or your challenge group, because they are ready to go on after just receiving 10 minutes of instruction, working on a task independently, and the teacher feels pretty assured that they can do that on themselves, do that by themselves. So then you'll see as group 1 moves from the teacher, they go directly to their independent practice. So this is kind of related to whatever the teacher just did with them here. The teacher then goes to giving some small group instruction to group 2, and then you notice as this group leaves the teacher, they go into their independent practice. So you can guess that probably more of the intervention is happening in group 2 or group 3, because they need some additional instruction before they move to the independent practice piece, whereas group 3 was ready to go. And then same thing. So then the teacher will meet with group 3. They have already rotated through their independent practice and their learning centers. The class then moves into some paired instruction time, and the teacher is doing the progress monitoring with 5 of the students each day. So remember, you've identified some of the students that are candidates for Tier 1 interventions, and part of the intervention plan is that you're doing these frequent ongoing assessments. So you're keeping this portfolio of assessment on the students, and so that has to happen. It has to be built into that day at some time. So this is where the intervention progress monitoring is happening, but it can, since the teacher is going to meet with 5 students every day, he's also monitoring the progress of the group as a whole. But when we're thinking about those assessments that we want to use to monitor progress, this is when it's happening. And then the teacher will bring them all back for their 10 minutes or so of whole group instruction to close out that period of the day. So this is what your school developed and they ran with in August. So they had their RTI training, they came up with this schedule, they figured out this is how they could do their in-class interventions for their Tier 1 students. So now that we've been in school probably about 10 weeks or so, they're at the point where they're looking at all of that progress monitoring that they're done, and the teachers in grades 1 through 4 have identified 16 students who are not making adequate progress using this Tier 1 intervention plan. So last week, your team of reading specialists met together, and you talked about then, okay, how are we going to create and implement a Tier 2 intervention plan? So if you go and you look at on Titanium, you will see there is another RTI module that is specific just to reading. And so we're now going to move from that one when we talk about reading interventions in Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So you as the reading specialist need to come up with this intervention plan. During this meeting, you also said, okay, let's look at the assessment data that we have from the classroom, and then you came up with a battery of assessments of diagnostics that you wanted to give to the students who have been identified as not making adequate progress, because you wanted to reveal some of their skill deficits, because that's what you're really going to focus on in Tier 2. So the assessments that you gave over the course of the week, there are a few of you, you're an actual team of reading specialists, so it was possible to get this done. You gave students the motivation to read profile, you gave them the core phonological awareness pieces with the phoneme deletion and the phoneme segmentation, you gave them the core phonics diagnostic, their words, their way spelling assessment, and the QRI-5. So you have all of this data on the group of students who did not make adequate progress in their Tier 1 intervention. So this is your assignment now. So as a team of reading specialists, you must now design this Tier 2 intervention for Rosa Parks Elementary and for these particular students based on the data that you have available. So this is what the plan is going to include. All of us by this time should have our data collated in that Google Doc, and so we need to meet as a group and we need to think about our intervention plan for for this group of students. And so we want to decide first who's going to receive the instruction. So we have this group, big group of students, but we need to put them into smaller groups. So you need to identify which students will be included in each group. So you will likely have more than one of these pages done. So you have a blank template like this in the supporting documents for this assignment, but you're going to have to do this for each group. So let's in this column, what we should have listed is which students off your data sheet are included in a particular group. Keep in mind that these groups should be implemented with a teacher-student ratio of 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. So depending on kind of the severity of their deficits or how numerous their deficits are can help you determine how many students you're going to have in a group, and also you need to consider who's providing that intervention when you think about how many students you're going to have in a group. So then for each group, you're going to provide this information. So with 16 students, you can have anywhere probably from 3 to 4 to 5 groups, depending on what that data looks like. So for each group, you're going to provide a description of the instructional focus. This may include the areas of reading that are going to be the primary focus. So, some groups may be focusing on a particular set of skills, while another group is focusing on another set of skills, and then a description of some of the strategies and tools that you'll be utilizing during those interventions. The amount of daily instruction. So this instruction may vary depending on the grouping of the students, from 30 to 45 minutes a day, plus whatever they still may be getting in the classroom during their Tier 1. Some of the younger students, keep in mind, might have shorter attention spans and might require shorter amounts of time, and older students are obviously able to attend for longer amounts of time. So in considering your grouping, if you're going with skills grouping, and you've got, first graders and third graders in that group, if that was going to happen, then you may want to think about how much time you can have them. Or if your schedule permitting, you're going to have all fourth graders in one group, then that changes how you make that decision about the amount of time. So we are also looking for information about when and where this instruction is going to be provided. So scheduling options for Tier 2 can include taking time from 2 different classes, so like 15 minutes from social studies and 15 minutes from their science time. Taking some time out from specials. Remember, Tier 2 is likely not, or is not happening in the classroom primarily with the classroom teacher. They should be receiving some special time. It doesn't mean the classroom teacher can't provide some of these interventions, but it's going to be happening usually during some other time. So in the event that a large percentage of students will require Tier 2, a teacher might need to schedule more than one of those 2 Tier 2 intervention periods during the day, and also give us an idea of where this is happening. So is it going to be within or outside the general education classroom? So you might find that there are 3 or 4 students from one classroom. Well, a decision could be made that if those 3 or 4 fit the criteria for being a group amongst themselves, that they could be served with inside the classroom. If they're from other classrooms, obviously they're probably going to be pulled out. So I'm actually going to run out of time, so I'm going to pick up on the duration of instruction piece on the second screencast.